Have you ever wondered how a man can transition from being a beloved leader to a feared dictator? Today we'll begin to unravel the enigma of Idi Amin, the man once hailed as the conqueror of the British Empire, only to later be known as the Butcher of Uganda. Idi Amin Dada Umi was born around the year 1925 in the West Nile region of Uganda. He hailed from the Kakwa ethnic group, a tribe known for their warrior-like spirit. Young Amin grew up in the shadow of colonial rule, and like many of his compatriots, he joined the King's African Rifles, a regiment of the British colonial army. Amin's towering physique and natural charisma set him apart, and he quickly rose through the ranks. Amin's ascension to power, however, was a product of more than just his personal traits. It was the 1970s, and Uganda was in the throes of political upheaval. The nation's first prime minister, Obote, had fallen out of favor, and Amin saw an opportunity. With the backing of the military, he seized the moment, ousting Obote and declaring himself president. Amin was initially celebrated as a liberator. He was charismatic, larger than life, and he knew how to play to the crowd. He promised a new era of prosperity, of unity, of Ugandan pride, and for a while people believed him. But as we'll soon discover, Amin's charisma and popularity were a veneer, a mask that concealed the brutal reality of his regime. His reign would come to be characterized by gross human rights abuses, political repression, and corruption. The beloved leader would become a feared dictator, leaving a legacy that still haunts Uganda to this day. Make sure to subscribe to our channel if you're intrigued by the enigmatic figure that was Idi Amin. We've only just begun to scratch the surface of his complex and controversial life. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into his reign. When Idi Amin seized power in 1971, he promised a better Uganda, but as we'll soon discover, his reign was far from it. In a shocking move, Amin expelled nearly 80,000 Asians from Uganda in 1972. These individuals, many of whom were Ugandan citizens, were given only 90 days to leave the country. As they departed, their businesses, homes, and other assets were confiscated by the government. This policy not only created a humanitarian crisis, but it also dealt a severe blow to Uganda's economy. The Asian community had played a vital role in the country's commerce and industry, and their sudden departure left a void that was hard to fill. Amin's erratic foreign policy led to a devastating war with neighboring Tanzania in 1978. The conflict was marked by heavy casualties on both sides and ended in a humiliating defeat for Uganda. The war further strained Uganda's already fragile economy and intensified the suffering of its people. Under Amin's rule, Uganda's economy nosedived, inflation skyrocketed, infrastructure crumbled, and essential goods became scarce. The country's once thriving agricultural sector was particularly hard hit, with coffee production, Uganda's main export, falling by more than half. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Amin's reign was the widespread human rights abuses. It's estimated that between 100,000 and 500,000 people were killed under his regime. These victims ranged from political opponents and military personnel to ordinary citizens who were suspected of disloyalty. Torture, forced disappearances, and extrajudicial killings became the order of the day. The scale of these atrocities was so vast that Amin earned the nickname, the Butcher of Uganda. Amin's rule was marked by violence, economic decline, and international isolation, a stark contrast to the prosperous Uganda he had promised. His reign was a dark chapter in Uganda's history, a period of terror and suffering that the country is still struggling to come to terms with. Like many dictators, Amin's reign was destined to come to an abrupt end. The first crack in Amin's seemingly invincible armor appeared in 1978, when he made a fateful decision to annex part of neighboring Tanzania. This was a move that would prove to be his downfall. The Tanzanian president, Julius Nyerere, was not one to be easily bullied. Nyerere retaliated by launching a counterattack, which quickly escalated into a full-blown war. Amin's forces, though initially successful, were eventually overwhelmed by the Tanzanian army and by Ugandan exiles who had joined them. They soon found themselves pushed back, losing the territories they had earlier gained. The war was a disaster for Amin, and it marked the beginning of the end of his brutal reign. By April 1979, Tanzanian forces and Ugandan rebels had reached Kampala, the capital of Uganda. Amin's days were numbered. He was forced to flee, leaving behind a nation in ruins. The Butcher of Uganda had finally been toppled. Amin found refuge in Libya initially and later in Saudi Arabia, where he lived out the rest of his days in comfortable exile. His reign might have ended, but the effects of his rule were far from over. Uganda was left in a state of complete devastation. The economy was in shambles, infrastructure was destroyed, and the nation was deeply divided along ethnic and political lines. The scars of Amin's reign ran deep. The number of his victims is estimated to be in the hundreds of thousands. His brutal rule left a lasting imprint on the collective memory of Ugandans, an imprint that still haunts the nation to this day. Amin's reign ended in exile, but the effects of his rule are still felt in Uganda to this day. So how should we remember Idi Amin? Idi Amin, the self-proclaimed last king of Scotland, is a figure that continues to polarize opinions decades after his reign. His legacy, much like his rule, is one shrouded in controversy, complexity, and contradiction. To some, Amin was a brutal dictator, a man whose regime was marked by gross human rights abuses, political repression, and corruption. His 8-year rule from 1971 to 1979 saw the expulsion of Uganda's Asian minority, the persecution of certain ethnic groups, and the deaths of an estimated 300,000 people. This portrayal of Amin as the Butcher of Uganda is one that is widely accepted and documented. Yet, there is another side to Amin that is often highlighted. A charismatic leader, he was known for his larger-than-life personality, his humor, and his ability to command attention. He was a man who loved to be in the spotlight, whether it was at a boxing ring, a military parade, or on national television. Despite his brutal reign, he was, paradoxically, a popular figure among some sections of the Ugandan population. These contrasting portrayals of Amin reflect the complexity of his character and the ongoing debates about his legacy. Was he a ruthless dictator, a charismatic leader, or a bit of both? And how should we remember him? As the man who brought Uganda to the brink of economic collapse, or as the leader who stood up to the West, championing African nationalism and independence? The answers to these questions are not straightforward. They are as complex and multifaceted as the man himself. They require us to delve deep into the annals of history, to question our understanding of power and leadership, and to confront the uncomfortable realities of human nature. Idi Amin remains a figure of controversy and debate, a testament to the complexity of human nature and the destructive potential of absolute power.